This is the recipe for seafoam. 1 cup of water, 2 cups white sugar, 4 tablespoons white vinegar, 3 tablespoons light corn syrup, and 1 generous tablespoon of baking soda. Now you can make a variation of that. It's called honeycomb by using honey, and these are the ingredients for that. 1/4 cup honey, 1/2 cup light corn syrup, 2 cups sugar, 1 generous tablespoon baking soda, 1/4 cup of water, and 2.5 tablespoons vinegar. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate and show you how to make the seafoam. We start with I'm going to turn my stove on to high, my burner on to high, and I put in 1 cup of water. And I like to put my wet ingredients first. It kind of helps keep the sugar from settling and sticking on the bottom. Then we put 2 cups of sugar, 1, 2, then we put in our distilled white vinegar, and we need 4 tablespoons of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. You probably noticed I'm not real accurate. Candy making isn't an accurate science. You don't have to level everything. If you get a little more or less your ingredients, it's just fine. It's gonna turn out just fine. So don't worry about it if it goes a little over or under. You don't need to panic. You think it's gonna be ruined. It'll just be fine. Okay, we're gonna put 3 tablespoons of Karo syrup or light corn syrup. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've got these ingredients in, and I'm going to carefully stir in. And I like to, when I'm stirring in ingredients, I don't swish it around real fast. I'm worried about getting on the side. You hear of people say, okay, if there's crystals on the sides, that you wash down your pan with a pastry brush or a paper towel. I never have to do that because I don't want to do it. It's an extra step. Just carefully stir it in is all you need to do, and it won't wash up on the sides. And a lot of recipes, and this is one of them, will put a pan on, the lid on the pan, and that'll wash down the sides. But I just still like all of my candies I make, I just stir it in carefully as I am doing now. Okay, this I just want to make sure there isn't any sugar stuck on the bottom, which is fine. You don't need to stir constantly on this candy recipe. I just do it occasionally until it comes to a full boil and it's all incorporated. Now you notice my pan, there's not a lot of ingredients in there, and you think, oh, I could do it in a smaller pan. I think you'd want a little bigger pan, because once you add a soda, it'll puff up and you'll need that size. But don't have it so big that your thermometer isn't covered by the ingredients and it's hard to get an accurate reading. But just a good size that will hold that when it's once you add the soda. Okay, while we're waiting here, I'm going to show you a few things I prepare ahead. I've got a cookie sheet, and this is what I will put it on afterwards. I know in the recipe, when I found that, it said to grease the cookie sheet or use foil and grease it, and I still had it stick. I find what I liked using best was freezer wrap, and I will spray that. I'll still spray that with a little cooking oil so that it doesn't stick. And I really like that. And this is not freezer, or this isn't wax paper. It's freezer wrap, and you'll find it in your grocery store somewhere. and it has, I use the shiny side up, and it's great. This is what I put on my, when I use caramel, any of my candies, when I'm dipping chocolates, when I set them on that, and they just come off so easily. So it's a great investment. It's not very expensive, and you'll use that for all your, a lot of your candy making. Okay, also what I like to have ready on the side is the soda, and that's 1 tablespoon, a generous tablespoon of soda, and I like to put a big generous. And I find the fresher your box of soda, as you can see, the fresher your box of soda, the better that will puff up, and that's what you want. The finished candy, you want it light and airy, and it just melts in your mouth. It's really a fun candy. Okay, and I'm being making sure and have a good generous. It's almost like a tablespoon, and you have a good heaping generous tablespoon. And see if there's any lumps in there. Break those up. You don't want any lumps, because it won't mix in well, and you'll have pockets of just plain baking soda. So break up any lumps and have this set aside and ready to put in as soon as your candy is to the proper temperature. Okay, look at this. Our ingredients have come to a full boil. I'm going to put on a lid, and I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. And what this does, it the steam will condense on there on the lid and wash down the sides of the pan. So we'll set a timer for 3 minutes, and while I'm doing that, I'll explain to you also, this demonstration I'm doing is the same as what I do on my DVDs. This is a kind of the same format that I'll take you through and all the candies that I show you on my DVDs and how to make those. And I do a demonstration. I have the recipe on there at the beginning. You can pause and write that down. And it's nice to be able to refer back if you have a question and say, oh, see how that's done. But to be able to visualize the candy, what it looks like at each process. So this is the same as I have on my DVDs, this process that I'm doing now. Now another thing, the thermometer, I show you on the first DVD how to calibrate your thermometer. And that's important because as you in every area it's going to be different, and you need to know how to calibrate that and adjust that. Okay, the timer went off. 3 minutes are up, so I'm going to just take off the lid, get out the steam, and I'm going to clip on the candy thermometer. Make sure my thermometer is covered with the ingredients, and I can see it's just barely down in there. You might tilt it to make sure you get an accurate reading here and there to make sure that is correct. We want to cook this to 285 degrees. Now remember to calibrate according to your area and your thermometer. And we cook this without stirring. It doesn't hurt it to occasionally stir, but you don't need to stir. It's not necessary. I love candies like that. You don't have to babysit. See, I wasn't sure if I'm getting accurate reading because it's just barely, you can see the thermometer's just barely down in there, but it is. It doesn't seem to change when I'll tilt that up and make sure that covers that well. Okay, it's been cooking probably about 5 to 8 minutes, and I'm getting close. When it gets within about 10 degrees, I will start watching it closely, because it seems like that last 10 degrees, it'll just all of a sudden, boom, shoot up there, and it's cooked real high before you know it. Notice the candy is starting to get thicker and a little darker. And I'll also, remember, I always like to cook to the temperature. I don't go for softball, hard crack. It's always, I've seen it a little different on each thermometer. People want different things. I will go to the temperature, and that's what I gauge it by so that I can be a little more accurate. And so I'm shooting for about 278. And I want you to notice in candy making, if you're 2, 4, maybe even up to 6 degrees less or a little more, it's pretty forgiving. Your candy is. 2 to 4 degrees isn't going to ruin it. If you're under or over that, it's pretty forgiving. So don't panic and worry that if it's not quite there. A lot of times you're going to be fine within 2 to 4 degrees. And also, if it does, one thing, if it gets hotter, too high if you have a water base and you haven't got been able to get there quickly. Add a little water and cool that down, and that'll save that so you don't burn it. But mostly go within 2 to 4 degrees within the area that you want, and your candies are going to be just fine. Okay, it's starting to get closer, and I am, again, just to make sure I'm getting accurate reading, I'm going to tip that up, make sure that's covering that bulb, because it seems pretty low on there, and we're about right where I want. So I'm going to turn my the stove off, and I'm going to add the soda, and quickly stir that in. I'm going to remove my thermometer and get that out of the way. And stir that in. And notice how that bubbles up? That's what we want. Then I'm going to pour that out onto the pan. And this is a recipe that you can scrape the pan. It's not going to hurt your candy or go grainy. Okay, if your pan is big enough, you can double this recipe. Now that I've got this poured on here, take it into a cool room and let it cool until it's hardened, or else you can put it in the fridge, anywhere, or freezer, whatever you'd like to let it cool. Okay, here's the seafoam that we've made, and it's all set up and cooled, and I've chunked it up, and you can see I've chunked it up by just using the tip of the knife and breaking off pieces. And see how easily it comes off the freezer wrapper that we sprayed. I have no problem with that. Now you can eat it just like this. It's really good. Kind of reminds me of cotton candy in a hard form. Just melts in your mouth. It's really good. But mostly you see it in the stores, and this is what's best, is dipped in chocolate. Now if you don't know how to dip with chocolate, on my first video I show you how to properly melt chocolate and how to dip with that. So if you don't know how to do that, those instructions are on my first video. And the thing that's also an advantage of dipping this in chocolate, seafoam will absorb moisture from the air and it'll get tacky. So once that's covered with chocolate, that seals that, and it gives it a lot longer shelf life.